Cardano has just completed a pattern which makes it so obvious to know exactly what is going to happen next. And it's far bigger perhaps than many anticipate happening for Cardano in the shorter space of time. And I'm going to tell you exactly why that is as soon as you hit that like button. Let's get into this video. Now, if you watched my Cardano video the other day, where I was telling you we were in a Wyckoff accumulation pattern. You're like, what on earth is that? Well, Richard Wyckoff, around in the early 1900s, identified that Wall Street, the big money on Wall Street, were manipulating markets, showing various patterns to try and fake everyone out at the bottom of markets and allow big money to be able to accumulate without ramping the price too hard. And this pattern has played out absolutely perfectly this year for Bitcoin and is now about to play out for Cardano. Now, before we look at the charts, I've talked about this as well on the channel before, the path to altcoin season. We have a big pump from Bitcoin, Ethereum, and then the large caps start to pump. And yeah, you can pay attention to all the news and all these things that are happening around us right now, but it all works out absolutely perfectly with what the charts are saying. There's no real mystery, guys, to how this works. The news is there to manipulate people into doing things in order to drive the market. Yesterday we had the settlement of the XRP case, which obviously we're all delighted to know went in the favor of XRP and therefore in the favor of all of crypto, particularly coins like Cardano, which were heavily underpriced because they got announced as potentially being securities as well. And because of that, it did something very interesting. Now, if you're like, well, why is this Wyckoff accumulation pattern so important? Well, guys, you get Wyckoff accumulation at the bottom and Wyckoff distribution at the top of markets. And if you can spot it early enough, you'll know exactly the plan the banks and the big money have. And this is Bitcoin, okay? Bitcoin, when it was down in its accumulation position earlier on this year, ramped all the way up to one point, and in fact, where it is now pretty much 70-80% higher. That's with the biggest market cap in crypto by quite some way. And I told you something very important that was happening on Cardano when we were in this range down here just the other day. And I mentioned that if you put the accumulation pattern on top of Cardano right now, it's exactly where it needs to be. And this is it, guys. You can see that the Cardano price fell lower earlier on this year, okay? Very much at the end of last year, in fact. And that would have been the sort of SC area. We then kind of play out a bit. We have a pump towards the upside. We dump towards the downside. We then pump up here. You can see we pumped up. We came nice and high here. We came back down for the spring. And notice the spring being very obvious because we have a little dip just below the previous support. So if we jump into here, we want to look just below the previous support. We can see this, okay? This previous support was at 2397 cents. And then you can see we came all the way down to 2304. So this under here was a very quick dip under support to collect all the liquidity from all the people who panic sold. And then the price goes in the other direction. I then told you that we looked like we were in a rising wedge, okay? A rising triangle, whatever you want to call it, and then we broke towards the upside. Absolutely no mystery here about what is going on. Now, obviously, if you've missed that move, then you're obviously going to be a bit disappointed that you missed out on that 25%. But if you were subscribed to the channel, then you probably wouldn't have missed out on that 25%. So there's a pretty obvious thing you've got to do there. It takes like 2 seconds. Just subscribe, guys. Now, what we can see here, again, another interesting area. Obviously, we had these like breaks above, but you can see that we do have a bit of resistance running in here. And many people are asking, like, is it a good time to buy Cardano? Guys, it was a good time to buy Cardano down here, but you were probably too scared to do so. And no matter how many times I try and indicate to you that you should be buying in buy zones, like this big green buy zone down here, most people are still waiting for the pumps to buy for some reason. It's much easier to buy pumps, guys, but it's much easier to get wrecked that way as well. Now, in my opinion, we are coiling up. Now, to anticipate where we might break to. Now, obviously, we are now running into the weekend. We do tend to see slightly lower volumes. We do have areas of resistance to pay attention to in Cardano that sit a bit higher. And it can be a little bit confusing because you're obviously going, well, what, where are we sat? Well, let's just look at Bitcoin after it did something very similar at the end of its Wyckoff accumulation. Now, this, guys, was the Wyckoff accumulation of Bitcoin all the way down here. Okay, so it basically ran through this zone here. This was the Wyckoff accumulation. And in my opinion, currently, Cardano is sat somewhere like here, equivalent, right? Now, obviously, you can see the Bitcoin did have this dump here, and it did this again. Now, obviously, just because it's happened before is not guaranteed to happen again. And for all of those of you who are like, oh, the Bitcoin halving, guys, the Bitcoin halving, while it is important, I do think that it plays less of an important role every time due to the very nature of what it represents. It's a halving, therefore the results each halving are less. Now there is obviously other things to pay attention to. There is a huge amount of liquidity in the world right now because obviously for the last year, everyone's been earning interest rates. That means that there is now quite a surplus of cash in the banks. That means that the banks now have cash to be able to invest in things such as cryptocurrency. We're now seeing BlackRock ETF looming on the horizon and all these other things. Now, obviously, take the news with a pinch of salt. But from that point on Bitcoin's chart, approximately down here, it did rally 73%. So I was wrong. Actually, from the very bottom, Bitcoin did something like this, 107%. So let's go back to Cardano. Now, saying that Bitcoin went up 100% and Cardano going up 100% from here is like a good kind of estimation. It doesn't work like that because there's different market caps, different market conditions, all these other things. But you would anticipate that from here, Cardano does have some areas of interest to be running into. Now, you are looking that potentially we could be getting out 43%. This is 65%. Now, I have told you before, there's a very real danger of buying candles like this. Every time you see these big candles, I want you to actually think sensibly about what is happening. The people who are buying down here, who bought at the very bottom, are now like 57% up. That might not be a lot of money if you got like $100. But if people were buying like millions of dollars and they've made themselves 570 grand, would you probably start to take a little bit of profit in that area? Potentially. So there is obviously a minor chance of a pullback here. What we're really looking for though is a break beyond and a retest. So do I buy right now? No. And I know people got really upset about this the other day saying, oh, you're just going to miss out if you don't buy now. Guys, how many of you were telling me that I'd miss out if I didn't buy here, okay? How many times have we got to know that we just wait for the pullbacks? I'm not saying we get a pullback to here. I don't think we will for Cardano. But I think we could see a pump like this, potentially, or a pump and then a pullback into a zone like this. That is where you buy. And while you might miss out on some of that upside potential, you actually gain a lot. And you gain a lot in training your psychology to be patient, because the next time you might go and buy one of those massive pumps, it could destroy you and you could lose 60-70% in one sitting. And it's happened before and it can happen again. And I just want to show you the Solana chart to understand why we can wait for pullbacks. Because they come very, very often. In this stage of the market, I still don't think we're in this like parabolic run-up stage, okay? I might be wrong, and if I am, then, I'm sorry. But let's look at what happens here. We get a good sort of pump towards the upside, a very aggressive pump, and then we pull back in. We get aggressive pumps, and for ages, Solana sits in this buy zone. But if you panic bought into an area like here, then I'm guaranteeing you probably sold at like 60% thinking, oh no, I've ruined myself and it's going to roll over. You panic sold, you lost your 60%. So if you had $1,000 in, you lost $600, you sold for $400 down here, and then this happens. So we wait for the pullbacks because then we get in on these. Now, where is Cardano really going? Now, guys, I'm kind of sick and tired of hearing all of these things, and you're welcome to leave the comment down below that like this is a dinosaur, this is a dead crypto, like HBAR is much better. I'm going to talk a little bit more about HBAR and other cryptos slightly later on today, but you need to understand there's more than just how that blockchain runs, the speed of the blockchain, all these other things that kind of drive the value. There's a massive reason why Ethereum is so much more valuable than HBAR and probably will continue to be more valuable than HBAR forevermore, even though HBAR might be a much better project. The Cardano token itself there's a huge amount of total value locked for Cardano right now. People are staking it. There's various mechanisms of which take crypto out of circulating supply. If you drop the amount of supply and the demand comes up at the same time, which is obviously happening now, then you get an explosion in the price like we've just seen in the last couple of days. So how do I know that Cardano is going to be going places? Well, right now there's tons of stuff being built on Cardano. It's been developing more aggressively than pretty much any project out there throughout the entire bear market, with the exception perhaps of things within GameFi, which obviously is a very exciting space to be looking at. So in my opinion, we're going to see some really exciting growth for Cardano. If we look at the chart, it looks almost identical to what happened in the first bull market for Ethereum, where we have a pump, we come back down, we have like a sort of a tailing off, and then we roll towards the downside. And after that, Ethereum did this. That's that equivalent bull market for Ethereum back in 2018. it dumps, it pumps, it goes down again, and then it rolls into a bear market. At this point, everyone was like, oh, Ethereum's dead, it's a dead project, it's a scam. And then, guys, this is what followed. From that top there, it came all the way back up and it reached here, $4,800, okay? So from that point there, which was the previous all-time high, back on January 2018, Ethereum then pumped an additional 246%. Let's come back to Cardano. Now, obviously, this is not complete science here, guys, but you would anticipate that something similar could be happening in the next bull market. 240% from previous all-time highs. We're looking from there to a price of around $10. Now, that's obviously not guaranteed. You need to go and do your own estimations on that, but that's a 32x. And if you were subscribed and you were getting in when I was getting in, then you would be massively, massively up right now on the way to your 32x, and it would be more like a 45x. And if you want to know exactly when you should be buying and selling, well, guys, then you need to be over in the Inner Circle Discord, okay, where we've got a number of experts sharing their technical analysis. They called XRP early, you can see here, talking about what was going on with Bitcoin, and we've now up over $1,000 from when we called Bitcoin. We've got loads of other crypto research and analysis going on all the time. People giving daily signals on cryptos they're buying. As well as that, next week, we're going to have our first fundraise for a pre-ICO project, which is something that is not available to anyone else in crypto right now, guys. And if you want to get involved in that, you just need to get into the Inner Circle Discord, link down below, $9.99 per month, 5-day free trial. Absolute no-brainer. You would have made your money back, and so much more if you were in it last week, buying in those buy zones along with all of us. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, hit the like button. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe. See you in the next video.